Let me start off by saying that Phantom Blade Zero looks immaculate. Dare I say, it will be the next Stellar Blade. And I do mean that in the most respectful way possible. In other words, Phantom Blade Zero will also blow the fuck up like Sean Yu did. That's because Phantom Blade Zero, which I will simply call Zero from here on out, for convenience sake, much like Stellar Blade before it, prioritizes being a game first and a playable movie second. Honestly, yeah, I'm really happy there are still developers out there who still see games as an art form that should be taken seriously. More often than not, Oriental developers are the ones who are doing this. Hats off to you guys for keeping the gaming industry alive. Comparisons with Stellar Ass aside, I'm fully aware that Zero is still very much its own thing. From the more ancient setting to the lightning-fast combat, which is saying something because the combat in Stellar Blade was super fast too, but Zero just takes it to the next level. Aesthetically, Zero looks like if Ninja Gaiden, Devil May Cry, Onimusha, and Metal Gear Rising had a foursome, which resulted in the conception of the most kick-ass baby ever. That baby cut his own umbilical cord. Speaking of DMC, I heard the developers, S-Game, were inspired by that franchise, and that influence is prevalent through Zero's combat. I don't think I've ever seen a game with a more fast-paced combat system than this shit. It's so fast, in fact, that when people saw the reveal trailer, some of them initially thought the combat segment shown in said trailer would be quick-time event-driven. No, sirs and ma'ams, but mostly sirs. That's actual gameplay. The developers of Zero are implementing something called a combo chain system that allows you to pull off a bunch of spectacular combos using only 2 buttons. This sounds like a really creative concept, and I honestly look forward to seeing how crazy this combo chain system gets. The combat itself, based off of the trailers and gameplay that I've seen, clearly has plenty of style and depth. You have to parry, block, or dodge attacks, and look for openings. It has a lot of grace. Like dancing with a much higher probability of death. Especially with the latest trailer they just showed off, called Year of the Snake, I believe, where Soul is fighting 7 bosses at once in a beautiful symphony of lethality. Then, during the second phase, the last 3 remaining of the 7 stars turns their leader's corpse into a lethal puppet. This is the most creative looking boss fight that I have seen in a long ass time from both an artistic and execution standpoint. The soundtrack playing during this battle manages to match a combat's high speed, enriching the fight itself. I can only imagine the level of creativity we'll be seeing from other boss fights throughout the game. So the end of the Year the Snake trailer showed off some new weapons. At least I think they're new weapons that you can get your grubby little mitts on. The soft snake sword is one that I find to be particularly interesting, as a flexible blade is not something you see very often as a weapon of choice in games. I don't think I've ever played a game that has a flexible blade as a weapon. Have any of you guys? Let me know in the comments below. I'm curious, because I'm a nosy prick. I need to know these things. The amount of different weapons for combat, from the weapon types you can acquire, performing stealth kills, killing enemies from a distance with long-range weapons, or being able to jump off walls and launching yourself towards enemies like a goddamn pinball. Everything about this game looks so refined. It's illegal how good this game looks. Stop it, S-Game. You're being too good. The gameplay isn't the only part of Zero that has caught my attention. Its premise also sounds pretty interesting. The protagonist Soul is an assassin who works for an organization known as the Order. After his patriarch is killed, he is framed for his murder and grievously wounded in the process. Soul is brought back from the brink of death by a mystic healer. There is, however, one downside. The spell has a deadline, that being 66 days. In that period of time, Soul must find the mastermind behind his patriarch's death in order to clear his name before he runs out of time and joins the choir of angels. Main narrative-wise, Zero will have a 20 to 30 hour runtime with multiple endings. Some people might think that's too short, but I think 20 to 30 hours is the sweet spot for a game like this. If a game is too long, then the developer risks the player being all like, fuck this shit, I want to move on already. God damn. Not only does the main narrative of Zero sound really good, but the side content won't include some fetch quest where you collect herbs for some asshole's dying grandmother. I say, let nature do the rest. Instead, Zero sounds like it will have a ton of compelling optional content, including endgame stuff like dungeons, which will have a multiplayer component, bosses, and a roguelite abyss. I'm guessing the abyss is a dungeon of some sort. Based off of what I've heard, side content will have the same duration as the main story. So, like 20-30 hours. That's pretty impressive, actually. The game will not be linear, featuring a semi-open world, much like the one seen in the Norse era of God of War, or Stellar Blade. Semi-open world games are the way to go, people. They have a compacted size that prevents them from feeling overstuffed, and they typically greatly compensate the player for exploring. Something Zero will do as well by the sounds of it. Exploration will have you come face to face with powerful foes, who I'm assuming are optional bosses. Upon defeating them, you'll be rewarded with new armor, artifacts, skills, and weapons, of which there are over 20 different types you can acquire throughout the game, although you can only equip 2 weapons at a time, a main weapon and a side weapon. I think we can safely assume the combat system won't get stale. The game will also have Souls-like elements. Despite this, combat won't be as punishing as the Souls series. Surprisingly, the game will have difficulty settings. Some people might not be okay with this. I personally don't mind it. That will just make the game more accessible to a wider audience. It's okay if you like more difficult games, but don't be like one of those dirty, unwashed dick biters who belittle someone just because they don't like to play super de-duper challenging games. Okay, you're not better than them. I do like challenging games, but I don't like games to be overly challenging, so it needs to be like a Goldilocks thing. Oh, this bed isn't too hard, it's not too soft, it's just right. So in other words, normal mode. Bosses have 2 phases. Not sure if they all do, but a lot of them probably will. Even if you die in the second phase of these bosses, you won't have to start the fight all over again. I've heard some people say that this is cool, while other people are like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. I'm sure they'll come up with a setting that lets the player choose whether or not they want to continue trying to fight the boss, despite losing during the second phase, or just starting from the very beginning. There are 2 status-related bars in the game, life days and buff stacks. Every time you die, 1 life day is deducted, and 1 buff stack is added. Depending on how many times you die, the ending will be altered. Thankfully, by the sounds of it, there will be a way to restore life days. It is a very unique mechanic, though I'm not sure how I feel about it. Can you only die so many times before you have to start at the very beginning of the game again? Or is it like a Crash 4 situation where you can play on modern mode and die as many times as you want while still keeping a tally of all your deaths as a deliberate and painful reminder that you suck ass at playing? If it's like the latter example, then I'm all for it. If I'm not mistaken, this game is running on Unreal Engine 5. I don't have trouble believing that, considering how gorgeous the game is. And that's just compressed videos on YouTube. Like, imagine how good this game is gonna look when we're playing it on our 4K televisions. Holy shiznit. Zero is one of the few games on current-gen consoles that actually looks like a current-gen game. The point is, the game is sexy as fuck, alright? There, I said it. Visually, Zero does look bleak. Although, that was the intent the developers were going for. One of the reasons for doing this is to make the colorful characters stand out more. The game takes inspiration from Chinese wuxia, I hope I pronounced that correctly. If I didn't, then I do apologize, and Kung Fu movies, with their goal being to create a Kung Fu punk style. Sounds awfully unique. Either way, a lot of the stuff that I just read, it sounds really promising. Considering the full development of this game didn't start until 2022, we are probably looking at a 2026 release date at the earliest. Nothing concrete has been confirmed yet. However, they will be announcing a release date later this year, maybe during the summer or even the fall. And then boom, 2026. Or if we're really lucky, 2035.